Hey everyone, and welcome to Sasquatch Theory. In this episode, we have a guest from the Lake of the Ozarks area of Missouri, and I was able to convince him to openly talk about his Sasquatch encounters that he had in the area. Legends of an unknown hominid roaming the forest of Missouri have been long talked about for many generations. The Native Americans in this area often refer to them as the hairy people. These hominids live separated from mankind, but every now and then people will run into them, and they aren't always friendly. Our guest talks about his encounters, experiences, and the theories that he has come up with along the way. If you've had a Bigfoot encounter, please contact me at sasquatchtheory@outlook.com. Okay, JB, where did everything start? And if you can, just give me a rough area where it
started down here, mainly. Most of my life growing up here, it happened here, and place down, I want to just say down by Lake of the Ozarks. A lot of people come here. They usually know the area, except for this quiet little town. Mm-hmm. They usually just drive through.
Okay, so what was your first incident or encounter? If you could guide me through that. What were you doing that day? What happened?
Well, it was probably around, I want to say it was towards the fall time. Me and my friend were at his house over a ways away from here, not too far, more than a stone's throw. We were out there, and he was taking me down a four-wheeler trail. We were out there shooting a BB gun he had just gotten. He had one of those slingshots. Had the shrapnel that you could shoot out of it. We were walking down towards the barn, making our way just to see what we could see on the trail, because usually there was animals and such down there. Mm-hmm. So what happened is we were going down the trail, and there were some deer that we had seen jump out, and a couple of rabbits and squirrels, and they took like a bat out of hell. They ran for their lives. They stopped when they seen us, kind of, and then just got out whenever we heard something coming up over the fence line. So this fence line was right and adjacent, covered by some, like an aspen is what I call them, cedar trees or else pines. They're all closely put together.
Were they pretty big?
Yeah, it was pretty tall stuff. Yeah. But this had been a juvenile. It kind of grabbed it mid-mast away from the head of the tree and everything from the trunk in there. Right here, it kind of grabbed over when it stepped over. Before that, prior, we heard it go down on the fence, and the fence got these clippings that go around them that hold them to the fence post. Mm-hmm. So whenever it went down, couple of them popped loose, and to my knowledge, I was just standing there and I was wondering what it was, but you can hear it. It was biped. It wasn't on all fours.
You could hear
yeah, you can hear it approach.
Yeah,
and it was kind of a cautious approach. Like this thing meant like it was going for something. It was stalking. It had to have been, but we heard it. What happened next is after that popped, it came over, and then that's when it reached up and it grabbed the top of the cedar tree and pulled it over a bit, and that's when it exposed itself from us. So whenever we were looking at it, I don't know what my friend was thinking because he was behind me. He was probably shocked. So what happened is it looked at us out of surprise, like, you guys aren't supposed to be here. We looked directly at it. I did anyways.
You saw it?
Yeah, I seen it. The eyebrow ridge protruded out a bit. The head wasn't as conical as what most people see. It's kind of a little bit rounded out. And the hair, it was a little bit shorter around the front of it, but the hair came down, kind of like mine does, and it just tapered down to its back. The hair was probably about 4 inches long, around about 3 in some areas, and whenever it pulled over, you couldn't really see much, but you could see the fingers and the nails. The fingers, man, they look like Johnsonville bratwurst sausages. I'm not even joking with you. The fingernails were like ours, except they were more blocky looking. They were black. And this thing, you could see the skin. It didn't have any hair on its palms. it didn't have any, maybe some on its knuckles a little bit, but it just effortlessly pulled it to the side, and it looked at us, and this thing didn't have a neck, you know. It just sat there because the traps were just massive. This thing was a dark color, but you could tell that when the sun would hit it, it would like tone out like a reddish kind of like a sheen, like shine to it. It's kind of hard to describe.
Yeah.
And all the while, what really got me the most is when I looked right at its eyes, and its eyes had like ours do, the coloring. It was red. It was red, and for some reason, I don't know why I thought this, I still do, I thought, wow, the thing could probably see at night. Like, this shouldn't be happening, and then that's when it hit me. Because it took my friend panicking and going up the hill, and when he started freaking out and panicking is when it started getting me, because it shifted its focus from me to him, and when it looked up at him, that's when I turned around, and I could see him scurrying up the hill. And I'm like, man, I shouldn't have taken my eyes off it. I looked over, and this thing shifted back towards me. And I said, whoa, this isn't good. Like, I didn't feel threatened, but I didn't want to be in this position. Like, I was young. I was like, I'm not supposed to be seeing this. This is something that, you know, I thought existed, and now I'm seeing it. It's being presented to me. This isn't my choice. And I start thinking, I need to start making some noise. The barn was right over here. It's probably about 25, 30 feet away. It had 10 on it, so I started grabbing the slingshot that I'd had that he'd given me to use to shoot whatever we were going to shoot at. I grabbed it, stuck the shrapnel in it. I started shooting at the tin roof and yelling and screaming, and then shooting at the fence and trying to hit whatever I could in its direction, and that's when it took off. I remember it letting go of the limb, and it just swayed, and I just remember hearing the thing jump, and then the strides were just amazing. It had to have been probably, when it took a stride, it had to have been somewhere between, I don't want to say anything wrong because I don't know, but it sounded like to me, if it were to take a stride, it would probably be a good stride from foot to foot on the run. It'd probably have to be about 6 to 8 feet on length. It had to have been. This thing could cover ground. It took off and went down towards the river bottom, and as soon as I couldn't hear it, that's when I just took off.
Could you hear any thumps? Like, thump, thump,
yeah,
thump?
I could hear it. I wouldn't say you could feel it. I don't want to say something.
But you could hear it.
But yeah, you can hear it. You can hear it through the leaves because the leaves were falling.
I've heard that in the woods. You just hear thump.
Yeah.
And it's like, is that them moving, jumping out of a tree, stomping their foot?
It's like if someone were to grab a cement ball and just drop it or something that was heavy on the forest floor. You could definitely hear it. If you're close enough, you could feel it.
Yeah, it's like someone threw a big stump. It hit the ground.
Absolutely.
So you could hear this creature whenever it stepped on the fence, like pop, pop.
It didn't step. You could tell that it put its hands down on it.
Okay.
And when it put its hands down on it, it must have motioned over it, because when they walk, you see how they walk and they sway. This thing had to just lift its leg up. Maybe I don't know how it would cross a fence. Some of them jump, from what I've been told. That's not it's not a common occurrence for me. I wasn't then, but. Yeah. It had crossed over the fence after it put its hands down on the fence, and that's how it made it over the other side.
You think it was sizing you guys up? And was it slow movements when he looked at you guys, or was it like real fast?
It was slow. It was very observant. Like, this thing was looking at us, getting a good look. Like, it was surprised, like, wow, maybe I've heard of these things existing, but now they're in front of me too, and I don't know what to think. Like, these things are right in front of me. Like, it might have been trying to calculate. I heard about these things like swaying, looking at people, trying to decide what it wants to do. This thing didn't sway. I think it was more like it didn't feel threatened. But when I started making a stance and shooting at stuff and yelling, it probably thought, wow, more of them are going to come. And it probably said, I'm out, I'm getting out of here. I don't know for sure, but it took off. It was in the fall.
Is it just curiosity, you think, or do you think they're trying to look for like an easy meal, and if they see too many people, they just kind of back off?
I think it generally might have been curiosity. It was by accident. It didn't know that we were there. It was after its food. Most of those encounters are pretty aggressive. It seen us, and it didn't act pissed or anything.
Yeah.
But I think it might have held something against us, because from that day on out, every so often there'd be hickory nuts being thrown at his house, and it would come by the windows at night. He woke me up one night saying that to be careful. He says, hey man, he says, I just seen something come by the window, and it scared us both one night it came by, and the silhouette of it, you could see it because the moon would come up on that side by the house. You would see it walk by, and then its head would like fill in the whole window, just so you could see like this part.
Oh well. So after that incident that happened?
Yeah.
So, okay, so it's around the property at this point.
Yeah.
And did they have anything else happen after that?
You know, after I had moved away and went to Colorado and stuff with my mom, they had said some stuff had happened, but even months before, a year to that ever happening, some stuff did like happen, like same thing, mesquite nuts and hickory nuts being thrown, and the occasional sound outside, and like you would hear stuff from the distance. Like he had chickens, and that's the weirdest thing, is nothing ever happened to the chickens. I don't know if it's because it was getting a pliable food source from down that area. Now if you look at this here, there's all kinds of stuff from when we drove in here. There's squirrels, there's deer. We haven't seen it yet, but there's plenty of turkey, plenty of wildlife, and they're pretty good at throwing rocks and such. So with a dead accurate aim, if they want to hit you, they'll hit you. But if they're not going to warn you, they'll just throw right past you. But if they mean it, they mean it.
Right.
You're gonna get it.
They got good aim.
Absolutely.
Those eyes, I think I asked you the other day on the phone, were they self-illuminated, or was it whenever it got hit by the light? Or
it was still light out enough, but it's just I didn't notice a shine or anything, but I could tell by the eyes, the way that they looked to me said something, that this thing hunts at night. It must not be used to coming out during the day because this thing's covered in black. You're going to notice something black out here, but if it's hidden well enough in the shadows and stuff, I think they played advantage, because if you look at them and the sunlight hits their hair, when the light hits their hair, it kind of throws off a sheen to it.
Yeah.
Like it absorbs the light. Black's known to do that. But these things, I don't know, it's like HD camo almost. They don't want to be seen, you won't see them. They'll see you before you see them.
Yeah. I noticed that. I've seen several Sasquatch where I'm from, and they had this shine to them, like jet black, but you could see like this chrome shine off their hair.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's hard for me to explain because I'm not an expert, you know.
Right.
I don't have one in my garage or my house, and I'm studying it.
Yeah, it's all theories, kind of like, I don't know, like when a hunter's trying to get a big buck. You don't really know what it's doing. You're just kind of putting the clues together on what happened and what you've seen, right?
Yeah, it's kind of like hunter watches hunter, because if you're ever out there, like I've heard reports of people, you know, watching them, these things, looking around for them. It's like, oh, you found out what I'm doing. What are you doing in my territory? And it's like the same for the guy that's in this tree stand that it's happening to. It's like, you're not supposed to be here. Hell, you're not even supposed to exist. But I mean, here we are. This is it. This is the showdown. It's nuts, man, because these things, there's got to be some kind of humanity to them. They're very smart. You know, they don't drive cars, they don't shoot guns. But I tell you, I've heard time and time again from people that they know what a gun is. Yeah, I've heard that too. And they seem to know what it is when they see it. They get upset. Absolutely. They kind of tone it down then. But, you know, I've heard, and it's never happened to me. I've seen trees shake and stuff, but I don't know for a fact if it was one. But they rock back and forth, and they start working themselves up in a frenzy like a chimpanzee. They start getting themselves worked up until they go after their prey. They want to chase. You know, if you take off, I think they're gonna chase you. Yeah. When you back off and you watch them from a distance, and you do like they would do, they're like, wow, this is no excitement. You know, they always talk about, and these days, even in school now, I mean, they even talked about, you know, what's the most dangerous thing on the planet? It's another human being. We're not the top of the food chain. You know, if we're going to hunt something, a lot of us love the chase. It's all about the chase. It's all about the hunt. Yeah. I'm glad I never ran. I've always stood my ground because I was so confused I didn't know what it was. Yeah. I think my mind was wrecked. Confuses a lot of people. When you see it, it's like, this is a story. This is a fairy tale. And then you come back to reality, and you're sitting right here. You're standing, and you're like, you can pinch yourself all you want. This is it. You know, you got to decide what you're going to do, whether you're going to stand your ground or you're going to take off running. This is it for you. Okay. So after that encounter, what's the next big thing that happened to you? The next big thing that happened to me, I have to say it was down the road is when I was at my friend's house, when I told you in Rocky Mount, and that had happened there. And he told me whenever it came up to the trailer and had slapped it, and I was in the restroom, he said, you know, man, when he came home that night, he was doing overnights at Walmart, and he said, I'm not going to lie to you, he said, one night I was here at the house, and he says, my girlfriend Alicia was in my room. I was sitting out here on the futon in the living room, and it had came up to the side of the house. I was about half asleep, and it slammed its arm up against the side of the trailer. When that had happened, he went outside, and he had a 12 gauge, and he racked around in it and said, I don't know who it is, but you better get your ass gone. Excuse my language, but
no, you're fine.
You better get gone, because if you don't, I'm going to pop around and you're trespassing. So if I do another one, I'm not just going to wound you, I'm going to kill you. You're trespassing, you leave now. He heard whatever it was. Obviously, it knows what the sound of a shotgun getting racked sounds like, and that's awfully strange. So it had taken off, and he heard it going down the backside of his house to the ravine, and that was all he heard of it.
Yeah.
Okay. But that was about it for me. And I don't know. I've had a couple of others. I'm trying to remember, man. It's just recounting everything. Like I said, it's like an attic up there. It's dusty. I'm trying to remember.
Oh no, it's
everything.
Cool. Okay.
Down here where we're at in the Saline Valley area, I've had a few. That one I told you about that was over there at the campfire area by the primitive camping before they moved it up further towards the pond. That happened there.
What were you guys doing that day?
We were out there hanging out, me and my cousin Donnie. I'll call him Donnie. We were over there hanging out, and we were at a fire that he had made. We're just chilling out. He was having a couple of beers. I didn't have anything. I think it was like fucking Kool-Aid at the time, honestly. And we were just hanging out, getting away. He was going through some stuff, and we just usually came down here a lot and roasted hot dogs and just hung out.
Okay, so there was a fire, some food?
There was a fire.
Okay, cool.
And they could have brought him in, who knows.
And that's where you guys had like the hickory nuts and rocks thrown?
Rocks thrown and everything. Okay. He's seen the eye shine, I didn't. I thought I could see a shadow moving around.
What did he say about the eye shine, though? What did it look like?
It was like an amber color. It was up a lot higher than what most would be. If you put it towards this right here, we're standing at this. If this is level by any means, if you look at this pile of dirt, if you go up a little bit higher, it's probably going to be right there to that bullet mark. It looks like that chip away.
Yeah.
I don't know what that exactly is, but that's probably around 5 feet.
Yeah.
8.5, 8.5 or whatever.
He said they call them pods down there. So, what happened with that incident?
Well, this is at the one I told you about when I was working at Menards. It's the only one that I really ever talked to. Yeah, I had talked to him about it because it kind of piqued my interest. And I thought, I'll pick at this guy's brain, see what he knows. That's when I asked him, and he said, well, I can't really say I don't know, but what I could tell you is that there's a lot of activity going on in Tennessee. And like I said, at that time, there was that family there in Tennessee. I can't remember what town it was, but they had gotten tore up. Like, the scene was pretty brutal, and a bear is not going to tear up multiple people. I just don't see it unless it's something rabid. I'm not a hunter specialist. I don't know. I never hunted big game like that, but I know that the child that was attacked, I think, was definitely a fatality. I think they got him to the hospital and they actually passed away. But that's I asked him about a couple of other things. He didn't talk to me about that, of course. That's just what I put in, what was going on at the time, because I was following up with some videos I was watching on YouTube about it. One thing he did mention, though, is that there's pods in certain areas. He did say that, and I didn't know what pod meant until I fully looked it up, and I heard it in some other videos. But pods are supposedly these family groups or groups, groups of Sasquatches that live in a set area that tend to might migrate. Some are known to stay in certain areas if they're comfortable. I think if they're a little bit older or territorial, they tend to not travel through places. So when he said that put into mind that there's got to be something here. I mean, if you look all around us, the vegetation, the coverage is here, the water's here, the food source is here, everything's perfect for this area. Once they become accustomed to that, like us people, we don't go out and make our own bread anymore unless it's, convenient for us. There's a fucking convenience store down the road. Let's just go there. We don't. I think that might be the ideology that they get. I don't know, but they're smart. They know what they're doing. If they want to be seen, they'll show themselves. There is a rare occasion, I think, that some people tend to see them And when they see him, it shocks them because they're like, I didn't want you to see me. They get mad. They think that, something aggressive is going to happen to them probably, so they take a stance. But for the most part, pods is where it's at. I think that's what they used as terminology of a family group that's set in a location, or a couple of them where they might or may be living at the time. So, yeah, it's a popular term. Like you said, you'd heard it from a guy down by the Current. People in Oklahoma, I heard it. People down by Arkansas as well, so...
Yeah. Have you ever found any good structures, anything like that?
Yeah, actually, I do believe I know of one. It may or may not be, like I said, I'm going to take you to that today. It's on some property that's a relation of mine that no one goes to. And I had hunted it last year for turkey, I want to say during... when was that, March of this year? Maybe turkey season was. I can't remember the actual day, because I remember I had the shotgun that my boss let me borrow because my 410 wasn't going to do anything. It would have shot a tight pattern, but I would have just tore that bird up. So we went down there, me and my friend Cody, and we went down towards the wheat field. And have you mind, I thought that this place was still, taken care of. Well, no one's been on it since I'd been gone to Colorado, which is years and years. What happened is we went down the ravine. It was really dark. I didn't turn on my light at all because I didn't want to spook the turkeys. They roost. And when they roost, shine your light. It will scare the shit out of you. It's almost like a pheasant, except they just let out, you could hear their feathers ruffle and take off. So we're going down to the ravine, and it's a wheat field that used to be down there. Well, I used to set up corn plots down there in high school. Started going down there, and as it cuts down, I started noticing some cedar trees that were lopped over, like they were fell over, blocking the road. Well, I climbed underneath it and went through it, and my friend Cody came up behind me. At the time, we were scouting this place. He had a 300 blackout he brought with him in his 45. And I had this shotgun, and we were coming up to the bottom. And when we came up to the bottom, it kind of goes off to the right, and it started getting more hairier, which means like there's a lot of trees and vegetation in the way. So when we got through that, we started crossing the road. Well, there used to be a small creek that would trickle across there, else go underneath the ground and go to the other side and cut down the hill. There was a big cedar tree lapped over. Right before you got to the cedar tree there, up top, there was a cedar tree about 10 feet tall. The top of the mast or the head was broke off. There was a couple of them in that area that were like that, and it kind of got me going. I'm like, who the hell is going to come down here and climb? I'm not going to put on my arborist gear and spike it up that tree. I mean, you can tell if someone's went up a tree or someone's reached up and grabbed something like that. I haven't been down there for almost since high school, honestly. And I think the year before that, I take back the hunting part because I think my cousin's husband had came prior to that, about 2 years before that. And that's it. My uncle that used to hunt it, he lives in, I think, St. Charles over by St. Louis, and he's citified now. He doesn't hunt or nothing, but he lets us do it, and it's only with permission. So
have you heard them vocalize out in the woods or talk?
I've heard whoops before down there by on the other side of the Osage River by the bluffs. At night I've heard them whoop. I came home one night when I was working at a factory here in a nearby town, and I turned off my Mercedes. It's a diesel. Whenever I'd cut it off, I could hear whooping down in the valley, and I've heard things down there like it sounded like they were getting killed a few times. I've heard rabbits scream down there, and just that's it, I don't know if they're into, torturing what they got. I know that they'll break the back legs of deer, and you'll hear deer out there, and they'll break their necks sometimes, or else they'll just rip their head off their...
Yeah, I've heard the same thing, so I agree with you.
It's
freaky.
something. It's like
it's not something you want to walk up on and investigate.
No,
when
it's
not.
Happening. It's I've had a boss too that was down by Wheatland on a friend's grandpa's property. They shot a deer, and I know in the book when you're hunting a deer, you're supposed to, if you shoot it, you let it go for a while. You don't want to stress the animal out because there's a difference in the meat taste. Whether you people or anyone believes that or not, there is.
Yeah.
Whenever it ran off, they went and searched for it. All they found was just the blood. Some of these things will eat guts. Sometimes they'll just take the whole deer. And he said that's all they found was the blood, where it had laid down, and that was it. They didn't find drag marks. It's like something came, grabbed it like a suitcase or a drop bag, threw it over its shoulder, and must have taken off with it. It happened more than once.
You said there's been missing people in this area?
Yeah, there has been. There's been a few.
Yeah.
A while back, there was a guy that actually, this place is pretty popular for the Ozark TV series.
Mm.
There was a guy that went missing, I guess, before they legalized it in the state, and they found him, but they thought it was something more sinister than that, but I guess there was another guy that was involved with it that they found him. It wasn't nothing to do with Bigfoot.
Mm.
But other than that, around here, yeah, there was a happening that happened with 2 girls that had drowned, and they tried saying it was because of the flood and everything, but they found one of the bodies, like I said, and it's a shame because you have a cadaver dog and there's a body out there. A dog's got to pick up. They got a hell of a nose, dude.
Mm-hmm.
They got to pick up on the bodies. Like, if that's one of the girls, I think the only thing they found, and that was like 10 years after the fact.
Oh, wow.
They had found like pieces of her pelvis, I think, further out there. I don't want to say the wrong thing. I just remember hearing through the grapevines they found bones.
It was strange.
Yeah.
Okay. And what's around here? We got the Osage. We
got the Osage.
Spring-fed creeks.
Spring-fed creeks. We got multiple creeks around here. We got Dog Creek, but that's further over the way there.
Caves, lake.
Caves all over the bluffs, usually. Not all over, but if you keep your eye out, and it's in the fall, if you're ever on the river fishing, keep your eyes towards the bluffs, because there are holes that go deeper than what you think. And for lack of better terms, there's overhangs too, where something could be laying at and be concealed. Not to mention that some of these river, like the ways that go into these, I call them oxbows or sloughs.
Mm-hmm. Where the river like bends.
Yeah, it's like where the river bends, like you were saying, the oxygen levels are kind of depleted, so gar and stuff will go back there because they could live in oxygen low levels. And these holes are probably about 14 to 20 feet deep because all the tree root systems have kind of eroded.
Oh, okay.
Erosion's big in this area because of the Osage. When they built the dam, they didn't realize that flow of water going downstream is going to be a lot more when they open up the gate, so it constantly erodes away at the banks. So this river is expanding past the ancient riverbed.
Okay.
Yeah, so a lot of the food source and stuff, it's here, but like the caves, there's definitely a lot of them, man. There's one down towards a place called St. Elizabeth that's called the Bat Cave. Wilson's Cave. It's massive, dude. You could probably fit on the entranceway of that thing. I don't know how big it is. It's so huge. It's just, you could see it from the camping spot. It's nuts. It's down by the mouth of the tavern in St. Elizabeth.
And the power line strips, you kind of have a feeling that they're using those to navigate.
Absolutely, that or hunting way, because you look at that, it's like a prime ambush spot. Because if you get one on one side and the other on the other, like one here and one here, whatever's in that run, it's like ping pong on Atari, dude. You know, any which way, they're so fast, they could get up to that. I mean, they could keep up with the car if they wanted to. If they want to get you, they'll get you. I think they like to play with people, but when it comes to prey, it's the same way because of the way they kill them. You know, I've heard stories about people in Texas hunting hogs. That one fellow was scared shitless in the stand because he said that it came in. It didn't really, I guess it didn't know he was there, but it grabbed the hog that he had shot and slammed it up against a tree and then flung it over its back and walked off like, hey, it's just another day in the woods.
Yeah.
I've heard stories about them in Colorado after the wildfires that came through and the trees were there. A lot of beetles and stuff will get up in some of the stuff that wasn't lost and they'll eat, and the ants will. I heard of a guy up there, I think it was by Silver Cliff, where he was hunting, had been up on the other side of the ridge, and he had his sights on it. He said something caught his sight, and he seen it walking like it was going up, and then it kind of flattened out a little bit, and it walked towards its edge, and the hill, I guess it just rolled down the mountainside into the embankment down there by a creek or something. He said that he had seen it come. And it's crazy how you watch these things because they're almost like so human-like, and that's why most people have a hard time shooting them. He sat there and he said, I didn't want to do it. He said, I just wanted to observe. He says, I thought about it, and he says, there's no way there was a fucking man in that suit. You could tell a costume from not being one. I mean, Hollywood could do it pretty good, but it's right there in front of you.
And your brain's telling you that's not real, but you're watching it. It's like, you can't shoot at something like that because could be a person, but you know it's not.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
he was sitting there, and I guess he was nested down in the prone position, had his rifle on it, and he said that it got down and it just sat down like a human, looked around, and it was sitting there, and when it put itself down, it put its hands down first and then swayed its body out forward and sat down on its backside.
Yeah.
It looked over, and it stuck its finger on this tree, and he said that he could see the ants almost crawling up its fingers, and it was putting them in his mouth, eating them.
Yeah. So I heard sometimes that's why they would knock, to see if the tree's hollow or if it's solid, and they'll start ripping it apart if it's hollow, looking for food.
It's true. He said that it had gotten up, and he was walking away, and he looked over at a tree, and he went over by it and stuck its ear to it, its head. They got ears, but they're a little bit smaller than ours from what I've heard. I've never seen them. And he started beating on the tree, and it was listening, and it kept doing it. And then it stepped back, and he said that it broke the tree in half, just swayed it, broke it in half, and grabbed out a coon, grabbed the coon, and beat it off of another tree like twice. And then consisted of ripping it open and eating it.
Oh, wow.
And he says it was shocking. He said he didn't move or nothing. He stayed there, and he just waited for it to leave. I can't remember if that was in Colorado. I'm pretty sure that was in Silver Cliff. Can't remember for sure.
And you said you got native blood in you?
Yeah.
Okay. Have you heard anything from your family regarding Sasquatch?
With me, it's kind of wild for me because I was adopted at a young age. I was adopted as a baby, honestly. So I never got all the traditional stuff except for when I went to meet my grandfather and stuff when I was older, and my aunt, but he doesn't know too much about it. He just thinks that it should be left alone.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, you know if the natives think like they're good or bad?
Different tribes have different meanings, different ways. I know the ones in Alaska, they'll tell you stay away from them. Don't mess with the hairy man. Some of them call them Junakwa. That's the female version, and some of them call the shorter ones Gukwig. And they're really vicious. And I think there's 3 different types, and they would know more about it because look at Alaska. You look at the Headless Valley, the Nakani Valley in Canada. They call the valley the Headless Men. Then they got weird names for places like I can't remember what this one guy said on one of the deals, but it was Wes Germer was talking about the guy, and he had came on. He was awesome. They were talking about Chief Haluska and stuff in Washington. I never knew the guy, but it seems like he knew a lot of wisdom. And the guy that was talking to Wes was someone that was up there constantly going into these bays, doing charters and stuff, and watching over tribal lands. And he said that they had contact with him. They called him the Big Hairy Man. But I remember him talking about Junakwa, the female version that goes around, that has the kissy face look to her. And that's what they say. Some of the females have that to them. And different tribes have different ways of it. Like the Navajos think that Bigfoot is like a brother. Some of them say that when the Union soldiers came through and got them and rounded them up, the kids were left to fend for themselves. Some of them fled and hid in the hills and on the canyons and on the mesas, and he took them and showed them how to fish and everything. Like, I believe in some sort of things, but I have a hard time with some because I never really had a violent encounter, but I don't think that they're very friendly. They don't want anything to do with us. They won't. From a scientific view, called Cebidotilidae. There's different names for them in Texas. There's different names for them in Florida. I don't know those enough to give them out. But when it comes down to it, they won't coexist with humans. They just won't do it. If you look at people trying to contact them, there may be some instances where people get to contact with them or get close in enough with them, but that's because they're getting something. That's anyone. If you give a kid, $100 and you keep doing it, it's not good, man. It's going to turn them into a monster. That's my source of getting this. I'm going to keep doing this. If I get this, I'm going to keep doing it. What happens when you cut off the supply?
Do you think they have a language?
I think they do. Their language, the whole samurai chatter, I never heard it, but it's damn creepy. The Sierra sounds are real. It's been proven by someone that works in the Navy. I guess they had done it with someone that had the audio recordings and stuff and actually went over them and compared them to whale sounds and stuff. The frequency and the octaves are completely different. The noise, the frequencies and like the tones are a lot lower. I think higher than humans. I can't remember exactly. I don't want to quote it and be wrong. But absolutely, yeah, they have their own language, almost like an Anabascan.
We talked about how a lot of languages are based off the Latin language.
Yeah.
And you were saying that with Sasquatch, somehow maybe their language came from the ancient natives back in the day. I think that could be possible because you hear certain words sometimes in recordings and it sounds Native American.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, I wish I knew more, but yeah, like you're saying, that definitely is a possibility. I don't know if we'll ever really know more because it's complex. It's a complex subject. People don't know and can't feel a certain way until it happens to them. And some people don't want it, and when it happens to them, it's usually the worst because it's like, oh, I didn't want this to happen. I wasn't expecting this. No one is until it does. Yeah. And they're opportunists to me because it's like a bear. You know, a bear gets out, like I said, it gets out after hibernation. If it's hungry, a bear's going to take it. That's a law of the bush, man. You know, if you're going to eat something, you're going to eat regardless if it's someone that you're with, even out there surviving. It's just like that.
Yeah. We got deer over there.
Okay, see another prime food source.
Yeah.
Where they at?
Across the river over there.
Oh, yeah, I see them.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're all over here, man.
Yeah. I got a few farming buddies and women that have cattle. You think it's a bad idea for them to go out there, like whistle at nighttime for their cows? Is that dangerous?
That's a good question. I've heard a lot of stuff by Richland, Missouri, and a lot of stuff down by the Gasconade River outside Crocker and that area down there. I don't think, maybe take a spotlight and bring a few dogs with you, but they don't like dogs. They don't. I think it's because dogs give them away.
Yeah.
But whistling, my dad always told me when we checked the cows at night, if I done it on foot, don't whistle. He said, don't. He said, son, there's things in the woods at night that you don't even want to see. He says, it's not the dark you got to be afraid of. It's the things that go bump in it.
So he knew of them?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good he warned you about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've heard a growl out there once with my friend. I'll just go ahead and just call him, I'll call him Killian. That's his real name. I'll just go ahead and throw that out there. It was something. I wasn't expecting it because we had these giant limestone bluffs that were down in the creek bottom towards the spring. We had a natural spring down there. And we were climbing them, and it was awesome. It was so cool at the time. We had driven the tractor down there. My dad had an Alice Chalmers WD-40, a trike. And if anyone knows anything about a trike, you don't want to take them up a steep hill hauling ass because you'll roll it backwards and you can kill yourself. We had climbed up halfway, and my friend was over here by me, and we heard it's hard to describe. I don't even want to do it. It's kind of embarrassing, but the grunt, the roar kind of sound that we heard, it was like, whoa, like that, like deep guttural. Yeah. And when I heard that, I looked at him and I said, what was that? Was that you? He said, no. And I just kind of froze, and I says, sorry, I didn't mean to say I says. I thought I seen something over there. It's probably just a squirrel. I froze, and I said, was that you? He said, no, man, that wasn't me. I said, you're kidding? He said, no, I've been right here. He said, it would have been a lot louder. I said, that came up from over the top of where we're climbing. And he said, that's true. I said, I don't know how far away. He said, it could have been probably maybe 1,000 feet away. He says, I heard it, though. And I said, let's get down and let's get out of here. Yeah. We climbed the bottom. We ran to do the muddy part of the spring. I mean, we ran like two kids that were trying to save each other from death. I mean, we hauled ass out there, got on the tractor. I didn't even think he wanted to sit in the back of the wagon that we had in the back of it. We had a hook to a hitch down by the PTO. It wasn't a PTO at the time, but it had levers on it that would pick it up. Yeah. It's kind of creepy. But it would pick up on it, and you could stick a pin in there with a carder. You could take off with it, but I thought he was going to end up there on the seat with me on the fender. I was like, nah, man, I don't want you falling off and getting hurt because you roll off underneath that tractor tire. Donezo. Yeah. So he got in the back, and I hauled as much as I could up that hill, and I got the tractor next to the barn. I hopped off. We ran through the field and went inside, and I didn't want to tell my dad. think my grandma had a good idea that something was out there because she always talked about stuff like that when they were younger. They couldn't afford much. But, yeah, back before they had a car, they had horses, and a lot of the old houses out here had carriage houses, and I think that's where they had their horses at. But she would always talk about coming home from church at night and them seeing something out in the yard that would take off, or sit out there on a tree stump just watching.
That's freaky.
Yeah, it is.
Man. So, what are they? Can you shoot them? Will they die? Do you think?
Well, I definitely know that they could bleed. Do I think that they get jump time? I mean, you ever seen a Mercedes jump time? It's an interference engine. A lot of stuff's not gonna work.
Yeah.
I don't believe that they can jump time. Are they linked to UFOs? Man, I'm gonna have to try to go at this like the Joe Rogan experience. I mean, it's gonna probably piss a lot of people off, but these things definitely live. They eat, they piss, they shit. They live, man. I mean, I don't know how much greener I could get on that, but I mean, I don't know. I don't think that they could jump time. I don't think that they could be invisible. Some of the Cherokees will say that they could be in front of you and you not even know it. That's kind of spooky. I mean, on the spirituality level, that is really spooky.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if they are hominids, wouldn't they have a soul too? You know what I mean? Wouldn't the woods be kind of haunted, per se? I mean, kind of like people with properties, maybe, possibly?
It's a wild question. It is. A lot of people have a clash with that. Like, is there a heaven or is there a hell? Well, you can't have the light without the dark. I mean, that's just how it goes. You can't have good without evil. I mean, you can't have God without the devil, and there ain't no sympathy in him for that.
Yeah.
But when the rubber hits the pavement and it goes from the gravel, you're gonna lose some rocks off the tire, and that's probably a good thing. But you're gonna hit someone's windshield and piss them off eventually, depending on what you're doing.
Right.
And damn, that's a heavy one, man.
I mean, you mentioned earlier that a lot of people would get upset, but you also mentioned that there's a lot of people going missing, and there's no answer for it, and it could possibly be these things. So
if these things they must have some kind of humanity to them. Something. I know that the females have a motherly instinct. If you come across one and you're young, you're probably going to get shown some mercy. But if you come across an alpha, or what they call an alpha, or one of these bigger ones, and males like to challenge.
Yeah.
Straight to the truth on things, Wes Germer was talking about how he used to be a bouncer. I've seen it being a kid or being, in a bar in general growing up, or else going as a teenager, or else an adult to a bar, obviously. How people like to puff up their chest and walk around like they got something. Everything changes when you confront them, or you're right there. Everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth, and that's it.
Yeah,
they want to be big and bad. You test them. My boss used to tell me that lived over by what's that place down there? Kind of by Crystal City almost. Camp Perryville, maybe. He lived down there, and he said, my dad used to test people. He would slap them and see if they wanted to do something, they'd do something. They didn't, you could tell. He said right then and there. I didn't go around doing that, obviously. I got these baby hands, but I think that if you arouse one up, I don't think that they're gonna have any, they don't care about repercussions. They live out here. They don't care if they see someone that they could take that's weak, that's a handicap. Where they think just a person's, vulnerable, that's a perfect opportunity. Because if they don't see you out here with anyone else, they're just going to go ahead and just say, hey, this is free meal. I'm going to take it.
Yeah, we talked about that earlier. Maybe they back off because there's more people. But what if you're hiking out here alone? You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And you're a female or a kid.
Yeah,
there's not going to be anyone.
Earbuds in, especially, man, they're going to do it. There was a lot of cases in Colorado that they had with missing hikers. There's one woman that they never found. I think they found her bike, but they didn't find anything from her. Yeah.
It's weird how, they find people, with their shoes missing and stuff like that.
Hunters and stuff, of all things, and they're supposed to be the most, informed, well-trained. I know this area, I know that place, but in those instances, if you look at the ones that do have GPS, like David Politis said, I've seen the 411, how they ping off of different locations. I'm sorry to say, but you have a kid that goes missing on a trail, He's down here. 2 fishermen have seen him. He wanders off. That's it. They turn around. He's gone. They find his body 3 or 5 years later up on a hill 300 feet over by an overhang up top. They don't find his body. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that, but they find his skull cap.
Yeah.
Upside down, clothes that look like they haven't weathered. It's because the mountains preserve a lot. They'll make stuff still look like it's kind of new, but it will have some wear from the sun.
Yeah.
But it's so dry in some of them areas that it'll keep things preserved. But when they found that kid's stuff, it was kind of haunting, because if any wildlife management person tells you it was a bear, they're full of shit. You know, I'm so tired of things being covered up like that. I don't want to go on a rant or anything. You know, I don't mean to make waves, but this is no wake zone. This ain't the lake. This is out here happening to people, you know?
Yeah.
It's just a boy that went missing. You're going to tell me that a cougar got him? Cougars go for the stomach. I know well enough now to see how cats hunt that they go for the stomach and they go for the neck if they want.
Yeah.
A cougar is not going to grab a kid by the back of a neck and drag them backwards. And if it gets disturbed while doing it, a cougar will cover it up and then come back later. Bears will do the same. If they're done with it for now, they'll cover it up with leaves or anything that they can get, floral stuff that's on the ground, anything that's of the area, and cover it. Come back, and they'll find the body, and they'll go back to eating it if they want it.
Yeah. Well, there's definitely Sasquatch, because here in Missouri, they used to tell people there's not mountain lions, bears, and all that stuff until trail cameras started becoming a thing. And it's like,
oh, there's panthers out here, dude.
Yeah, but they'll lie about that, and they'll definitely lie about Sasquatch.
Anything.
Minimal stuff.
They don't want to put that on the books, because if people find out that C-bitted Tilladai was out here, it's a North American ape. Any way you cut it, it may be related to this. A chimpanzee is said to have 99% the same DNA.
Yeah. You think people will try to protect them, even though if we find out they're the ones that are making people go missing? Are we really going to want to protect that?
Absolutely, Pete. You'll have all these tree huggers and PETA try to get involved that don't know their ass from a hole in the ground. God also knew about the Nephilim, too. And the Great Flood, there's a lot of signs of it, man. If you look at all these bluffs around here, the Lake of the Ozarks, at one time you could see how the water levels dropped from the erosion.
All right, I'm glad to have another encounter logged down from the great state of Missouri, and I apologize for the bad audio. This video was kind of on the go and on the fly, so I put it together the best I could, and I hope it turned out good for you guys. If anyone watching this has seen a Sasquatch or cryptid creature in the Lake of the Ozarks area, definitely contact me, and I would really like to hear your story. My goal is to get a hot lead of current Sasquatch activity, and I would like to get out there and hopefully get a good shot of one of these creatures out in the open. I certainly think it's possible. Alright, thank you JB for sharing your Sasquatch encounters here on Sasquatch Theory, and I appreciate everyone for listening, and until the next one.